Hello, this video comes to you courtesy of Ibrahim Khalil. I found this in my comments waiting for approval. Often, if you ask me to do something in a video, YouTube thinks this is spam and hides that comment for me to review. Anyway, he's bravely posted a story and asked me if I'd mark it, so why not? It's really useful to be able to see what other students can do. And often that's useful because as a teacher, I can't really put myself into a student's shoes. I'm already an expert in English, and it's difficult to write things that a student would write in order to show you. The examiner's first gut instinct is to look at length, well, after your handwriting, that is. And so the length is 379 words, and I'd say that was just on the average side of what you'd expect in a 45-minute story. For example, I would write comfortably 800 words. I'm not expecting you to do that, but you can see you're writing less than half than I would. A good student would be writing around 500 to 600. Now, that doesn't mean that all is lost, of course. This could still be a pretty good story, but what it does mean that in your revision, you need to simply write more. Get used to writing more. It's only practice. And once you get used to that, you'll find you get to 500 quite quickly. Okay, the next thing that I'm scanning for when I'm reading is the beginnings of sentences. And what I'm looking for is a variety. Now, automatically, you can see, even without reading this, that there isn't that much variety. So it starts to warm up as you go through, but just scanning along, you can see that a lot of sentences begin in the same way. That one starts to be better. I'm missing a few. I'll just pause the video while I highlight. Okay, here we go. So you can see there's a tremendous similarity in all these words, even when you're starting with pronouns or possessive pronouns. It's not engaging to read in terms of sentence starters. Here, you're starting with a different word. It's a noun, not that interesting, but quite good. And this is the only one that starts with a verb. So your number one technique to practice here, Ibrahim, is going to be to vary your sentence beginnings. And during your revision, you're going to write every single sentence with a different word. Okay? And then gradually it becomes second nature. And then when you're in the exam, some will start the same way and it won't matter because you've already developed a habit of thinking about interesting ways to start your sentences. Okay, let's now read the first paragraph and see what we think. The glorious sun emerged from the distant navy blue sky, emanating a fierce shimmering light, bringing life into everything that it so gently touched. The early glimpse of dawn brought a misty cold fog upon the city's seaside. This, however, did not stop life from blooming. Seagulls flew around in circles, capturing the attention of the mates. Plants absorbed their nutrients, growing into fine young trees. The waves of the deep blue ocean blissfully rocked boats up and down like a child, excited to play with its new toy. Still rising, the sun was a lion, its head held up high, eliminating shadows, except for one. A shadow that could not be extinguished, even with God's mighty power. The shadow of that cave, the cave which caused him immense pain. So you can see from the way I've read that Ibrahim has thought dramatically in terms of his description. But that is a bit of a problem because Ibrahim's writing a narrative and he's employed loads and loads of descriptive techniques, which is holding up his story. So yes, include descriptive techniques in your story, but in a story it's the character and plot that drive the action. And the description is just there to help you out, either to understand the character better or to understand the plot better. So this is too much description. You can get away with it in a novel when you've got 200 pages to play with, but in a short story you can't. And then the other thing that I'd point out is that even if this was a description, if this were a description, you're getting great marks for your sentence variety. You're really thinking about complex sentences with lots of detail that really do bring a picture to life, but you're trying too hard. One of the things you're doing is something that Mr. Bruff recommends, which is having two adjectives together. Now that's quite a good technique, but when you overdo it, it just seems as though you're trying too hard. Here you are in green, I've highlighted your adjectives, and you can see how you're overdoing them really. A single adjective often works really well. A double adjective if you want to add something that's more powerful, but once you overdo it, it's like somebody shouting at you, you stop paying attention. And another thing that would have helped you really is in the plan of your story. So I teach my students not to plan the whole story, but actually just to think about their ending. So this ending is going to involve your character called Harper, who's remembering the death of his friend Lee, and the death is connected to this cave because this is where Lee's body is buried. So if you do include some description, it has to be relevant to that sort of story. So you might go with the contrast of this beautiful sun with his mood, which is the opposite, so the opposite of pathetic fallacy, in which case you'd then contrast it with the misty cold fog, perhaps. Although, no, actually, strike that, you'd contrast it with the cold fog, and that would introduce you with pathetic fallacy into the mind of Harper. As he can't take joy in this beautiful scene, he feels kind of oppressed by his memories, like the mist is oppressing this view. Right, now here you've got a description which is entirely about Harper, and good writers don't do that. You're still approaching this as a descriptive task. In a story, you will bring us the description as Harper is thinking and doing things, and then you will choose the right bits of description to include. So let's have a look and see what would be right. Harper was already awake, awakened by his ruthless memories. Well, that is definitely a sentence that I'll keep because it's going to be relevant to what Harper does next, going to the cave. He wore a cobalt blue jacket with buttons, some that were loose and some lost, as if they were lost in the deep Arctic Ocean. Well, that's not really relevant to anything that's going to happen, so I don't need that. It fitted perfectly onto his broad, solid body. Okay, well, if he's going to be a physical character who has to exert strength in some way or demonstrate power, then that description would be relevant. But in this story, it's not going to be, so we don't need it. His red auburn hair was finely combed like the majestic mane of a lion. Again, unless he's going to be performing some sort of bravery in this story, then that's not really relevant. Or even more interestingly, if he looks brave but is actually going to turn out to be cowardly, and you'd have that element of contrast again. His fair complexion, soft and numb, bore the scar of that fateful day. So that is going to be relevant to what happens to his friend Lee. A great joke, by the way. I love the idea that he's called Harper and the friend is called Lee. Great To Kill a Mockingbird reference. That's just the sort of thing that will amuse an examiner. Really appreciate that. Well done. And for those of you who haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird, get to it. It's a great book. You'll really enjoy it. And it's also what we call cultural capital. It's the kind of book that educated people have all read and will reference together. It's just a way of joining a civilized club. Do read it if you have the time. And actually, you do have the time. Go and read it. Okay, well, now that we've eliminated all this description, what should you do? Well, I tell my students, start in with the action. So actually, this sentence would be the first sentence of your story. We don't know why he's leaning against a brick wall. What's he reminiscing about? Who on earth is this friend Lee? But there are going to be enough clues for us to find out as we read. So start in with some action or in the middle of something so the reader doesn't quite know what's going on and has to catch up. Then I'd include these descriptions in bold, and that would then give you the opportunity to have an interesting structure to your story. You could tell us how Lee originally died using flashback. And then, of course, you would be able to present Harper in a heroic light, in which case some of your other descriptions up here might be slipped in at the same time, or you might portray him in a cowardly light, in which case those descriptions could be used ironically. That would then give you some more drama and pace to your story, and an interesting structure, which is one of the things you get marked on. So that flashback would work there. So then the last thing I'm looking for is a crafted ending. Only this time Harper began to falling towards a never-ending pit of darkness, only to hear the deafening scream of his own voice. So that's a good little twist there, that he's imagining the screams presumably of when his friend Lee was killed, but now that's inverted so that he himself is screaming, and Harper is only just becoming aware of this. Then Harper listened attentively. He could just make out the sound of footsteps. When he looked back, there was nothing for him to see. It was just a feeling of the past. So that's quite a good ending. Don't have so many full stops. An ellipsis is just 3. Always punctuate like an expert. What we've got here is an unresolved ending, but we can work out why he's thinking of the past because of what will have happened to his friend Lee. There are better ways to end it. If you want to find out how to craft an ending, buy my guide. I've got 3 short stories in there, and I have a lot of detail on how to end your story. So I hope you've learned quite a lot from Ibrahim there, and I'm really grateful that he posted this, because as I say, he'll be making the same kinds of choices that you're making possibly, that I won't anticipate in my teaching. Obviously subscribe if you want more. Post me your own stories. I really love reading them, and I'll turn many of them into videos for you. I'm actually writing a book of short stories for students and teachers at the minute, so it's very much on my mind. And just a final thought, I usually get things posted to me by, well, I'm assuming, an immigrant student or perhaps studying abroad. It's really interesting to me that immigrant students or students studying abroad seem to go the extra mile. They work really hard and get fantastic results. So I, learn from that. Work hard and you'll do really well. You don't have to be an immigrant. I'm half Spanish and obviously half an immigrant. But come on, you English people, work hard. Sorry, Ibrahim, you may be English as well, but you know what I mean. Don't take the exams for granted. Work hard and you're going to do fantastically well. So once again, thank you very much.